An innocent child is murdered by a heartless man, and his family faces the consequences when the child's father seeks vengeance. The movie begins with a breathtaking view of a peaceful valley. Crystal clear water flows gently, creating soothing sounds. The area is lush with greenery, and tall trees tower everywhere, making it feel like a serene paradise. In this beautiful setting, a little boy struggles with a sled piled high with logs. His small hands can barely hold onto it, and the sled keeps slipping because of the weight. Nearby, his father is adding even more logs. The boy's grip fails, and the sled gets away from him, sliding down uncontrollably. Furious, the father catches the boy just in time to stop him from falling, but scolds him harshly, calling him useless. In his anger, the father slaps the boy so hard that he falls to the ground. The boy's mother watches silently from the house, saying nothing. Embarrassed and hurt, the boy gets up and runs away. Meanwhile, another boy, Matthias, is riding his bike along a winding mountain road. He calls out for his friend Lucas as he pedals. When he doesn't find him, Matthias parks his bike and heads into the forest, searching. Lucas is there but has fallen while running through the woods. Matthias helps him up and notices a red mark on Lucas's cheek, the result of his father's slap. Lucas doesn't want to talk about it, and instead directs Matthias's attention to a mysterious doorway hidden beneath the mountain. Intrigued, the two boys approach the doorway, open it, and step inside. Inside, they discover an old bunker filled with scattered army helmets. Excited, they put the helmets on and pretend to be soldiers. Lucas acts like he's been shot, dramatically falling to the ground, while Matthias pretends to save him, shouting, "I'll save you!" The boys laugh and play, their imaginations running wild. After a while, they leave the bunker and head home, their spirits lifted. In the next scene, Lucas is sitting sadly in the back seat of a car as his father, Louis, drives down a mountain road. Louis, clearly irritated, asks Lucas to hand him a pack of cigarettes lying nearby. Remembering his mother's warnings about cigarettes being bad for Louis's health, Lucas refuses. Louis grows angry, demanding the cigarettes, but Lucas stands firm and says no. The argument is cut short when the car suddenly hits something. It's Matthias, who had been riding his bike toward them. Louis slams on the brakes and jumps out of the car to check on him. He feels for a pulse, but realizes Matthias is dead. Lucas is frozen in shock and horror, watching from the back seat. Louis, panicked, drags Matthias's lifeless body and his bike to a nearby ditch and throws them in. He even removes bike parts stuck under the car to cover up the accident. Shaking, Lucas watches helplessly as his father lights a cigarette and glares at him with a menacing expression. Later, Matthias's father, Francis, is seen searching for his missing son. Spotting Louis's car, Francis waves it down and asks Louis if he has seen Matthias. Louis lies, saying he hasn't, and tries to reassure Francis that Matthias will turn up soon. As Louis starts to drive away, Francis notices Lucas crying silently in the back seat. That night, Lucas has a terrifying nightmare where his father tries to kill him with an axe. He wakes up in a cold sweat, only to hear his phone ringing. The call brings tragic news. His parents' house has burned down, and both his mother and father have died. Lucas's partner, Julie, tries to comfort him as he processes the shocking news. The next morning, Lucas, Julie, and their friend Arnaud attend the funeral of Lucas's parents. After the service, the group begins loading what's left of his parents' belongings into a truck. Lucas looks around, his eyes lingering sadly on the remains of the burned-down house. While they are talking, an older man in a wheelchair approaches them. Lucas tells Julie that the man is Francis, Matthias's father, who lives nearby. Lucas introduces Francis to his friends, and Francis explains that he ended up in a wheelchair after an accident. Despite his physical limitations, Francis offers to help Lucas by giving him a box of family items. Francis rolls up a ramp and leads them into his house, where they sit and talk about a traditional lumberjack activity called Schlitting, which involves loading logs onto sleds. Francis reminisces about the dangers of the task, explaining that it requires great strength and skill. To avoid future accidents, he says he sold his old sled. In a storage room filled with handmade items, Francis shows them a small decorative sled, or Schlitter, that he crafted. Everyone admires the craftsmanship, but when Arno jokingly says it doesn't look dangerous, Francis snaps. He snatches the sled from Arno's hands, clearly offended. Trying to lighten the mood, Francis asks Lucas to make coffee, while he retrieves a box from the basement. As Lucas opens a cupboard, he spots a glass Matthias used to drink from, and is suddenly struck by a vivid hallucination of Matthias standing before him. The vision vanishes quickly, leaving Lucas shaken. Meanwhile, Arno tries to convince Julie to reveal a secret to Lucas, but she refuses, saying it would only make things worse given Lucas's troubled childhood. Arno then attempts some pull-ups on a wooden bar in the doorway, but the bar breaks, and he falls. Everyone laughs at his clumsiness until they hear Francis returning. They grow nervous, thinking Francis will be angry about the broken bar, but he surprises them by brushing it off. Francis opens the box and shows Lucas old photos of their families and childhood memories of Lucas and Matthias. He tells them that Matthias lost control of his bike and fell into a ditch, which is how he died. Heartbroken, Matthias's mother eventually passed away from grief. Francis closes the box and hands it to Lucas. As Lucas loads the box into his car's trunk, he tries to start the car, but the engine won't turn over. Francis offers to help and examines the engine but can't figure out the issue. He calls a mechanic friend, but the friend won't be able to come until the next day. Arno decides to check the engine himself and discovers the problem is with the hose pipe. Francis takes Arno to the storage room to look for a replacement hose pipe. However, once inside, Francis suddenly strikes Arno in the face with the pipe, knocking him down. Back at the house, Lucas and Julie grow worried about Arno's absence. Lucas looks out the window and sees Arno driving away in a four-wheel drive vehicle. Confused, Lucas sends Arno a voicemail. Francis returns and calmly explains that Arno left to fetch a part for the car. Lucas grows suspicious when he finds the hose pipe in the basement and wonders why Arno didn't take it with him. Later, Lucas receives a text from Arno, claiming he went to a nearby town called Epinal. As night falls and Arno remains missing, Francis offers Lucas and Julie a place to stay. He shows them to Matthias's old room. During dinner, Francis reminisces about Lucas's father, calling him a skilled lumberjack. As they eat, Lucas sees another vision of Matthias sitting next to him with a scar on his cheek. Shaken, he realizes it's just his imagination. After dinner, Julie goes to bed, and Francis offers Lucas a homemade drink, continuing to talk about Matthias and the past. The movie's suspense intensifies as Lucas finds himself facing chilling truths and perilous situations. Lucas is exploring the house when he stumbles upon a cupboard filled with toys. Suddenly, he sees Matthias standing in front of him, but his face is disfigured and burned on the right side. Matthias calls out to Lucas, leaving him shaken. Lucas tries to brush it off, but he remains uneasy. Later that night, while Julie is fast asleep, Lucas finds himself unable to sleep. He quietly takes Julie's phone and goes through her messages with Arno, discovering that Julie is pregnant. This revelation angers Lucas, as he doesn't want children, and he begins to feel overwhelmed. In a fit of frustration, Lucas calls himself delusional and storms out of the room. Outside the house, Lucas smokes a cigarette, his mind racing. As he re-enters the house, he finds Arnaud's phone in a cupboard. Searching through the messages, Lucas becomes determined to find out where Arnaud is and what has happened to him. Lucas's search leads him to the storeroom, where he notices the basement door with the carpet removed. Curious yet cautious, he opens the door and sees a faint light and movement coming from below. Before he can investigate further, he hears Francis approaching. Lucas quickly hides, watching as Francis emerges from the basement, replaces the carpet over the door, and leaves in his wheelchair. After Francis leaves, Lucas enters the basement, lighting his way with a lantern. The dimly lit area feels eerie as he searches for Arnaud. Deeper into the basement, Lucas unlocks a door and is horrified to find his parents, Louis and Matilda, chained inside. Before Lucas can react, Francis appears and attacks him from behind. Meanwhile, Julie grows worried about Lucas and starts searching for him. She ventures into Francis's room and finds it empty. The sight of a dead cat with its stomach ripped open in another room horrifies her. On a table, she discovers a diary, maps, and a family photo, which deepens her unease. Back in the basement, Francis has tied up Lucas and is taunting Louis, accusing him of causing Matthias's death. Francis recounts how his wheelbarrow overturned near the accident site, and he saw Matthias's bike wires stuck under Louis's car. Consumed by grief and revenge, Francis reveals that he has devised a deadly trap for Lucas and his family. Francis sets up a pulley system with ropes connecting Lucas, Louis, and Matilda in a cruel arrangement. Each person's rope supports the weight of another, creating a situation where one person's failure would result in disaster for the others. Francis forces Lucas to confront his guilt over Matthias's death, reminding him of his silence after the accident. Just as Francis is about to strike Lucas, Julie arrives and calls out to him. Lucas urges her to run, but Francis pursues her. Julie manages to evade him temporarily, hiding in a room. She calls for emergency help, but Francis finds her and breaks down the door. Julie escapes by breaking a window and jumping outside, only to find Francis waiting for her. Back in the basement, the tension between Lucas and Louis boils over as they blame each other for their predicament. Matilda, struggling to hold on to her rope, finally lets it go after Louis insists. A heavy metal cutter crashes down from the pulley, slicing Louis's body into 4 horrifying pieces. Lucas pleads with Matilda to free herself from her restraints. As chaos erupts, Francis captures Julie and ties her to a woodcutter's table. Lucas confronts Francis, attacking him with wooden planks and freeing Julie. However, Francis retaliates, dragging Lucas and beating him severely. Julie manages to pick up a hammer and strike Francis, allowing them to tie him up and lock him in the basement. Lucas and Julie help Matilda out of the basement, but Francis breaks free and stabs Matilda in the leg. Despite her injury, they escape into the dark forest, carrying Matilda. As they run, they hear faint cries for help and discover a wooden box containing Arnaud, barely alive. The trio seeks refuge in the bunker where Lucas and Matthias once played. There, Lucas finds Matthias's mutilated body, with his eyes and lips stitched shut. Overwhelmed with guilt and sorrow, Lucas lights the candles around Matthias's remains. Morning arrives, and Julie notices that the bunker door is now open. As Lucas steps outside, he discovers Arnaud tied to a sled, struggling under its weight. The sled is precariously positioned to slide down and strike Julie, who has been tied to a tree by Francis. Determined to save her, Lucas confronts Francis. A brutal fight ensues. Lucas is stabbed, but manages to kick Francis onto a sharp metal spike, killing him. Lucas then redirects the sled away from Julie, saving her, but succumbs to his injuries moments later. Julie screams in despair as Lucas dies, haunted by the memory of his playful promise to Matthias. "I'm here to save you." The film concludes with rescue teams arriving at the scene. They recover the bodies of Francis, Louis, and Lucas, while Julie and Matilda are taken away in an ambulance. The haunting story closes, leaving behind a chilling message about guilt, revenge, and the devastating consequences of silence. In the end, Francis's twisted plan to avenge Matthias's death culminates in tragedy, showing the depths of his grief and the destructive power of unresolved pain. If you like this movie, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel.